Hi, my name is Aya. You're watching Aya Reads, and I'm here to do another tier ranking video. I've been loving doing these videos, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to tier rank every single book I've read since July. So I actually did a similar video tier ranking every single book I read for the first half of the year, which I'll leave linked for you. And I was debating, am I just going to do another one at the end of the year? But since I am already doing so many end of the year videos, I figured let's just make that one a little bit shorter and split it up. So basically I'm going to tell you about the books I read for the last 3 months of the year. So July, August, and September. I've read 41 books in the last 3 months. They run the gambit from 2 stars to 5 stars. Let me just record my screen here. So basically most of them have stayed the same. So I have favorite of the year, which is obvious what that is. I've loved, liked, reread. Just Hot is one I added because there's just some romances that I don't have active thoughts on. It's just a fun, good, smutty good time. And as McKay from Oh Hey McKay would say, no plot, no thought, just hot. Basically, that is that tier. It was fine and hate it. So yeah, let's just get started. These are really in no particular order. But these are all the books I read in the last 3 months of the year. So Heartless by Elsie Silver, I'm gonna put at loved. I know it's a lot of people's favorite book, and I definitely understand why. For me though, I was like half slumping when I read this book. There was a good chunk in the middle where I just stopped reading it, and I feel like if it's a favorite of the year, no matter what is going on with my life, I would take time to read it. So therefore I did really love it, and maybe on reread it will be one of my favorite books, but for now I'll just put it at loved. Empire of Storms is a reread. I've been reading the Throne of Glass series and I've been loving it. So yeah, I love rereading books. You'll see that there are a bunch of books in here that have been rereads for me. I know, I'm very interested to hear from you guys. Do you guys love rereading or do you never reread? Because I love revisiting things I really love. The Love That Split the World. I'm debating between It Was Fine and Hated. I'll just put it at it was fine. I was enjoying some aspects to it, but it's definitely nowhere near Emily Henry that we know today. This is a young adult book. I believe it's her first book. I believe it's her debut book. Yeah, it was fine. I enjoyed some aspects and didn't enjoy others. Happy Place, however, is definitely a favorite of the year. This is her latest release, and I loved it. It was a second chance romance that I thought was done perfectly. It also has a fake dating aspect to it. I was just living my best life while reading it, and I didn't have the highest expectations for it because before this one I had never given an Emily Henry a 5 stars, so this is my first 5 stars for her. The Bridge Kingdom was a reread. I love this book. This is my second time reading it and it still holds up. Full Metal Alchemist, Volume 2. I'm going to put at liked. Actually, let me also tell you what I thought of Full Metal Alchemist Volume 1. I think I'm debating between hated and it was fine. Let me put it at hated, not because I actively really hated it. It was just that the disappointment was very high for this volume. This was the first one. I've heard so many good things about this series. Everybody really seemed to love it. And to me, it was such a disappointment. I didn't understand why people loved it. I gave it 2 stars. And I was really debating not continuing on. But since I'd already bought the second volume, I figured, you know what? Let's just read that one. And it took me a while to read it. And then when I finally read Volume 2, I kind of understood what people were saying that they loved so much about the series. The whole found family aspect, the brotherly love. Whereas I felt like that was completely missing in the first volume. So yeah, it has an upward trajectory. I already bought the 3rd and 4th volume, so hopefully I'll have those at the end of the year. Hopefully one of those will be one I loved. The Doctor was fine. It wasn't even just hot because the sex scenes in here, I'd read better by Nikki Sloan, mainly The Frat Boy, which is a favorite of the year. This has something going against it, which is I don't really love the trope of ex-boyfriend's dad, especially not in the way it was done with this book, where they literally were broken up in the same week that she started dating his dad. So I don't really love that. So therefore, it was just fine. I do understand why people love it, but for me, I really didn't. The Sanctuary of Kings, I hated. Unfortunately, this series really went downhill for me. I gave the first one 5 stars, the second one 4 stars, and this one unfortunately was a 2 star. I just felt like I didn't really connect to the main character. I thought the love interests were not interesting, and I thought mainly the setting of it was the least interesting setting you could have had for this series, considering all the other settings we've seen. And like the way she could have gone with this story. Plus, there was this whole plot line of Camelot and King Arthur, and I didn't understand why that was in there. Yeah, so I didn't understand why that was in there, and I just ultimately I just didn't really love it. It was a disappointment, unfortunately. Tower of Dawn was a reread that I loved so much more than the first time I read it, so this was an excellent reread for me. And this is like a novella, but it's really not a novella. It's almost 600, over 600 page book in the Throne of Glass series. Reckless by Elsie Silver, I liked. Yeah, I really loved Winter's story in here. I just felt like Elsie could have done way more with Theo's story, and I feel like that she didn't really do that, unfortunately. So it was, I think I gave it 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. Obviously, it's still Elsie Silver. It's still the Eaton family. And it's still, yeah, just a good book. But I unfortunately gave it 4 stars. And I do feel like I didn't say this in my wrap-up, but I feel like the fact that none of them, I felt like neither of them were related to, what's his name? The dad. I forget his name. Oh my god. Yeah, also kind of made me not really love it as much as the other books. Anyway, I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever. The Strange and Beautiful Sorrows of Ava Lavender, I hate it. I don't really understand magical realism, and especially not this one. I didn't love it. I think I would have DNF'd it if it wasn't so short and if I wasn't reading it for a vlog. So yeah, unfortunately. The Assassin's Curse plus The Pirate's Wish, I liked. I enjoyed my time reading it. I didn't really have any expectations for this duology, and it was a fun duology. I did really enjoy my time reading it, and I guess I would recommend it. Murder in the Family, I also liked. It was a fun reading experience for me because I read it because Meg with Books read it and did a video on it, and I was reading it while watching that video. Plus, I was also listening to it, and I thought the audiobook was excellent as well. It's mixed media. This is a mystery, and I don't normally read a lot of mysteries, but I had been in the mood. Hollow's Grove was just hot. But I felt like this was a very good spicy novella. I thought it was done perfectly well. It is also like a Halloween novella, so it's October, so if you're looking for that, I would highly recommend this one. But it is just filled with steam, and that is really the only point to this book. The Indigo Spell was a reread for me. This is really where the love story comes ahead, which I obviously was enjoying my time very much. This is the 3rd book in the Bloodline series, which is a spin-off from the Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. Powerless by Elsie Silver was a favorite of the year. I really love this book. I know this is not really a whole lot of people's favorite book, especially comparing it to Heartless, which came before it, but I really loved Powerless. I loved both Jasper and Sloane. I loved the pining aspect to it. I know not a lot of people are a fan of the pining heroine. I love pining heroines. I love reading about them. I think because I relate to them so much, but yeah, it was just, I really loved it. It's also a hockey romance. It was so good. I loved it. The Professional by Cressley Cole was fine, and I'm very sad about it because I love the Immortals After Dark series by her, and I actually heard great things about this trilogy. The Professional, however, I didn't really love. I will continue on with the series, though, because I trust Cressley Cole, and I've heard amazing things about the second one. But this one, it was just fine. I actually forgot a lot about it already, so that's not really a good sign. The Treachery of Beautiful Things was fine as well. I gave this one 3 stars. There were some things in here that I thought were done beautifully, but the main character was boring, the love interest was boring, their love story was boring. But I did feel like Ruth Francis Long really did a good job portraying this fairy world and the whimsicalness of it perfectly. So, yeah. The Right Move is a favorite of the year. It might actually be my favorite book, so let's just put it at the front. I love this book. This is so good. This is the second book in the Windy City series, the first one being Mile High. And I did like Mile High, but The Right Move I loved with all my heart. I still think about this book to this day, and I frequently think about it. I absolutely love it. If you've not read this series yet, I would highly recommend it. The games we play, I'm gonna say it was fine. It was not even just hot because I felt I skimmed a good portion of this novella. I felt like they were in a particular setting. They should have stayed there and not left it, because once they left it, I couldn't care less anymore. So yeah, Fourth Wing. Ugh, I'm debating between favorite of the year and loved. Let's just put it at loved, because while I was reading it, I was thoroughly enjoying my time. I will continue on with the series, obviously, but when I put a little bit of distance between me and this book, I just feel like comparing it to the other three that are already on the favorites of the year tier ranking, I think about those books way more of my own accord as opposed to Fourth Wing. The only time I think about Fourth Wing is if I see somebody posting about it on Instagram. Yeah, so it's never really because I've been thinking about it on my own, but I did really enjoy it. I would highly recommend it. And like I said, I will definitely be reading the second book that comes out next month. Mile High, I'm gonna say loved. No, I'm gonna put it at liked. I enjoyed it, but I did feel like it was way too long for the story it was trying to tell. It's not even that much longer than The Right Move, but I felt like since The Right Move had so many tropes, and I just loved the characters a little bit more than Mile High, I just felt like Mile High dragged a bit. Yeah, I did enjoy my time, and obviously I loved it enough to continue on with the series. I think it's a good hockey romance with a hockey player that's not the usual hockey player that you see. He's actually a black hockey player, which I don't know anything about hockey, but to me it feels like a very white sport. So that was interesting to me as well. And yeah, it also has a fat main character who I related to a lot. So yeah, very good book. Still Beating, also liked. I know a lot of people really, really, really love this book, and I can definitely understand why. I gave it 4 stars. I did definitely enjoy it. It was very heartbreaking, but I felt like the main female character hurt the main male character so much throughout the middle portion of this book, and I felt like sometimes it just went too far for me, which I understand. I understood why. She obviously was hurting. She obviously went through something traumatic, and like I would argue she even went through, like, her pain was definitely more than his pain, but he also went through something very traumatic, and I felt like she didn't give space for that at all. So that's why I gave it 4 stars, but I did like it. I would highly recommend it still. The Mistake I also liked. I thought this was a good second chance romance. I loved John Logan. The main female character, however, I was not really a big fan of her. I understood why. She was a freshman when we started this book, and she definitely very much read like a very, very young girl. But yeah, I love the Off-Campus series, and I cannot wait to finish that series. The Heart of Betrayal was a reread for me. This one I loved more on reread, which is similar to Tower of Dawn. I'm actually going to put them next to each other. When I first read The Remnant Chronicles, I was so mesmerized by the first book because of the whole mystery aspect to it, and I really, really loved it. And then we were taken from that setting and went to a completely different setting and focused on a completely different, like, other character. The main character was the same, but the person she interacted with was different than the one that I wanted her to interact with. So that's why I think I still gave it 5 stars the first time, but I liked it significantly less than the first time. Now on my reread, it was definitely flipped for me. The first book, Kiss of Deception, since I already knew the mystery, was a little bit less good in my opinion. Whereas The Heart of Betrayal, this new setting, I forgot so much about it. I was so intrigued to read more about it, so that's why I loved it more the second time around. Love in the Afternoon, I loved. I love the Hathaway series. I gave every single one of them 5 stars. It is one of my favorite historical romance series, but definitely one of my favorite series of all time. I love this one. I love it more than The Wallflowers, actually. And this was the final book in that series, and I felt like it concluded it perfectly. One tiny complaint I have is that I wanted to see more of the entire family, like as in like an epilogue type of way. But other than that, I thought it was a perfect series, and I would highly, highly recommend it. The Chambermaid Volume 2 was just hot. Like, this literally had a sex scene in every single chapter. It's just a novella. The first book is about this chambermaid who pretty much has sex with every man in the house, and not just men, everybody in the house almost. And in this book, she goes to a different house and ultimately becomes a sex worker. I felt like this was unnecessary. I thought the first book stood well on its own, but it was a hot book. So if you're looking for that, I would recommend it. Same with Caught by the Convicts. This is an MMF story, and I felt like for a novella, it was done very good, because usually with MMFs, which is a polyamorous relationship with two males, one female, where the men actually also have sexual relations, usually it takes a lot to convince me of this throuple, because you not only have to convince me of one relationship, you have to convince me of three, and that usually takes a lot of pages. Whereas I felt like with this one, the way the two men were already friends, I felt like she did well convincing me that this was like they would stick it out. I guess it is still Jessica Kane, so it's still unhinged, and it is very insular for the girl involved, but I did really enjoy it. The Deal by Elle Kennedy, I think I'm gonna put it at Loved, but right at the beginning of Loved. After I finish the tier ranking, maybe I'll put it, I'm debating between Favorite of the Year and Loved, but yeah, I'm just gonna put it at the very beginning of Loved. This is the first book of the Off-Campus series, and this is still a very popular series, even though it came out in 2015. So, and I do feel like the reason for that, even though I've not finished this whole series, is because of The Deal. I think this book is so special, and I can definitely see why this book in particular stood the test of time. I really loved it. Garrett and Hannah have a very special place in my heart. I loved watching their love story, and I love this whole friends to lovers romance that they had going on. Laura Olympus, let me actually put both of them at Loved. So this is volume 3 and volume 4. I have been loving reading Laura Olympus. I can definitely see why it's such a popular graphic novel series. I'm thoroughly enjoying my time reading them, and now I'm all caught up, so I'm actually having to wait for new volumes to come out. I know it's a webtoons that I could read online if I wanted to, but I've been enjoying reading the hardcovers for them, so yeah, definitely loved every single volume I've read. Married by Morning by Lisa Kleypas is a favorite of the year for sure. This is the fourth book in the Hathaway series. It follows Leo and Catherine, and their love story has been set up since the second book. So I've been looking forward to their story for 2 books, and it did not disappoint whatsoever. I love it so much. It's definitely one of my favorite books I've read this year, in one of my favorite romance series I've read. Tempt Me at Twilight, I loved. Let me actually put it at Love. Yeah. So even though Married by Morning is definitely my favorite, a clear favorite in the series, like I said, I gave every single one of them 5 stars. So Tempt Me at Twilight is like a bit of a more like a dark romance historical, which I really loved as well. Yeah, it was just so good. Also like a billionaire romance in a way. Like it has a lot of tropes that a lot of people really love. And this kind of, like the first 2 have like a story arc that kind of interconnect. The third and fourth also have kind of like a storyline that interconnects. So that, yeah. I don't know what I want to say with that statement, but anyway, I said it. I really loved it, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time in the last 3 months reading or finishing the Wallflower series. Red, White, and Royal Blue I liked. This one I read because of the movie, and the movie I also really liked. Ultimately, I felt like it had a lot of different things that I don't really love in my romances, but despite them, I think she did, but I did think Casey handled them pretty well, so therefore I did like them, whereas maybe in another author's hands, I might have not really loved this book. I think you guys all know what Red, White, and Royal Blue is about. It's about the son of the president falling in love with the Prince of England, and their love story, their forbidden love story. Like I said, so this has been on my TBR for years and years, and I'm glad I finally got around to it. Other words for home, I think I'm gonna put it at It Was Fine. This is a middle grade, written in verse. It's about this Syrian girl who she and her mom, they flee to the US, and basically her setting up her life while her brother and her father are still in Syria, and there's like a war going, and the war is going on. It is a very poignant book, and there were definitely some aspects that I definitely related to, because for those of you who don't know, I'm actually from Iraq, so obviously it's neighboring Syria. So there were some aspects that I definitely did relate to, but I do feel like I mainly related to her cousin, who was half American and like was born in the US. I related to her way more than the main character, but even so, I obviously I'm not the target audience for it either, but I don't know, I think my hopes were just way too high for this book. The Basilisk of Star Manor, I liked. No, actually, I loved. Especially, I felt like, so this was a novella. No, I'm just going to put it at liked. I'm sorry, I'm going to put it at liked. It was a novella. I do feel like if it was a full-length novel, I might have loved it. This is the 2.5 book in the Tempting Monster series, which Sanctuary of Kings is also a part of that series. And you do have to read this one to read that one. Yeah, it was... Usually this series revolves why choose romances, whereas this is just a romance between like a monster and a woman. It's a basilisk, and every time you look at him, you die. But, so he gets paired with a blind girl, and she's perfect for him. I thoroughly enjoyed my time while reading it, especially comparing it to the third book, which I really didn't enjoy. I think this just elevated itself in my mind. The Seduction of Viscount Vice, I'm gonna put at It Was Fine. I think I gave all of them 4 stars, but I do feel like the first 2 definitely stick out in my mind more than this one. So actually, in the first part of this tier ranking, I had a tier that was called Forgettable. Maybe I should have added it, but I changed that one for Just Hot. I don't know, I felt like I don't think about this book at all after I've read it. I never thought about this book at all after I read it, and especially comparing it to the second book, but also the first book, I felt like this is definitely my least favorite. I did give all of them 4 stars, and I was enjoying it while reading it, but it really doesn't stick out in my mind as a book that I read and loved. Book Lovers, I also liked. So this is by Emily Henry. I gave this one 4 stars. I did really enjoy it, but comparing it to Happy Place really to me feels more like a romance than Book Lovers did. Book Lovers definitely leans more towards women's fiction. Do you feel like Emily Henry kind of releases book in that order? Like, I felt like her first book was more women's fiction, then the second book was more romance, the third book was more for women's fiction, now her fourth book is more romance, and I prefer romances over women's fiction. So that's why I loved Happy Place way more than Book Lovers. But I would still recommend it. Like I said, I think I gave it 4 stars, and I was enjoying myself while reading it. And A Million Junes, unfortunately, I hate it. So I actually, for those who don't know, like I read 4 Emily Henrys. I did a Emily Henry vlog, which I'll leave linked for you. This one, I didn't really like at all. I gave it 2 stars. In fact, but I did think out of her first 2 novels, I had higher hopes for A Million Junes, which maybe is why I was sorely disappointed. I didn't really love the love story. I didn't really love the main character, and it's so forgettable to me. I didn't enjoy myself at all. Anyway, even though I ended it on that note, this is my tier ranking, and I think I'm gonna stick to it. I think I'm gonna just leave the deal at loved. And even though there were a lot of books that I think I gave more books in these 3, I think I gave more 2 stars out this month than this quarter than any other quarter. Most of the books I read that were new reads, I loved. So, especially comparing it to the It Was Fine and Hated category, because the Just Hot ones, I was also enjoying my time with. So basically these, like, it's only 11 books that I either didn't like or hated, whereas all the other ones I at least was enjoying my time or I really loved them. 4 new favorite of the year. So I'm gonna have a hard time, I think, deciding what my actual top 10, top 15. I've not decided yet what my actual favorites of the year are gonna be, but these ones I definitely, if not all of them, definitely some of them you'll see in that list. That was my tier ranking for the books I read in the last 3 months of the year. Definitely let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were. Also, I would love to know some of your favorite books that you read in July, August, and September. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Definitely leave a like if you did. And I want to thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.